Hello, everybody. This is a new training brief for Ekoparty 2020. Today, we're talking with Abhay, who is giving 2 trainings this year. Luckily for us, he's going to be teaching about DevSecOps and also container security. So the idea today is to discuss with him the content of these trainings and why it will be important for the community to keep learning about these topics. So hello, Abhay. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Sabrina. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so before we dive into the trainings, just let's recap about your career because it's very interesting. You have a lot of experience in application security. You have developed your own frameworks. You're kind of an expert in this topic, which now is so important for the community. Containerization is a big topic of the moment, and we're so happy to have these trainings from you this year on this topic because it's very urgent. So what can you tell us about this sector and why is it important to pay attention to it?
Right. That's a very good question. I think, yeah, so let me give you a little bit about my background and then kind of segue into the answer to that question, at least from my perspective. So I started off as an auditor initially and then a pen tester. So at least for the last, I would say, I've been experienced for about 10, 11 years now. And most of that experience, I would say the first 5 years of that experience was spent in pen testing and assessing and reviewing security controls for different companies of different sizes. Again, pen testing was where I found a lot of fun, especially in terms of the work that actually happened. It was a lot of fun doing pen testing. But as I think 2015, 2016 approached, I started to see that the entire landscape, that is the application security landscape, was changing quite a bit, right? I was starting to see that developers were, or the dev function, so to speak, was kind of taking over the entire SDL or the entire software development lifecycle. In fact, everything was as code, right? So earlier it would only be essentially your apps were developed as code. But then in 2015 or so, I started to see that, hey, even servers are configured with these infrastructure as code. Even cloud environments are brought up with infrastructure as code. Docker started to come by with containerization. You know, it was getting big around that time. So one of the things we started to realize was that the old ways of doing security, especially for apps, would not work anymore. It clearly started to show up because the way apps were built, the way apps were developed and deployed, that was not going to work anymore. So the old ways were kind of going away, even back in 2015. Then on the other hand, I also had customers who used to come up to me and say, look, we are having a serious problem. When you do a pen test for us, that's great. We find a lot of issues and it's great. We fix it. But by the time we fix it, we have this new crop of flaws that have come up because our applications are being built and developed so often. We are always fixing flaws. We don't seem to ever get ahead of the security challenges for our applications. So what do you suggest? Is there a way we can kind of keep pace? So development is going at a certain pace. Can we keep pace on the security front? Is there a way to do that? So these two things kind of got me thinking about how do we approach it, right? And of course, not just me, a lot of people in the industry, of course, have thought about it. And we've come up with solutions. So one of the things that I think has happened since 2015 and everybody has realized, and in fact, I have a lot of Ekoparty attendees writing to me and saying that, you know, they are undergoing this change as well. They're seeing it within their organizations. They may be working for banks. They may be working for pharmaceuticals and manufacturing. All of them are going through this change where applications are being built faster and faster, going out to market faster and faster, but security is just not keeping pace. So one of the things that I started to do since 2015 was start to focus on scaling application security. Right now, scaling application security on, first of all, as an application security process itself, which is your DevOps and DevSecOps. The other aspect of scaling application security is containers, right? So when you're on containers, you have so many different. Containers has kind of become de facto for a lot of companies. You see companies just using containers as a standard way of doing things. So container security was another area of focus for us. And of course, the cloud, again, was becoming a huge part of everybody's life, right? So you have your Amazons, your Azures, your Google Cloud. You had those people, essentially, you had companies that were being born in the cloud, essentially building all the services on the cloud. And then you had this sudden burst of Kubernetes. You suddenly had, hey, we have containers. How do we scale this out to a massive extent? So all of these things is something we as a company decided to focus on. We built the first ever DevSecOps training back in 2016, and we also built the container Kubernetes serverless course that we are doing at Ekoparty is also the first of its kind, because it kind of covers the entire umbrella of your cloud deployment new tech in one thing. So it's so that's when we came up with all of this. So since then we've largely been where is the industry going, and let's try and address some of these challenges for people. That's the kind of direction we have taken as a company since then.
That's great. And actually, one of the main differentiators of your content is that you give it like a hands-on approach, which is very valuable for professionals, because they, apart from like following a tutorial, they really need the experience, and they really need to leave the training with the knowledge of how to do it tomorrow at their workplace. So what can you tell us about the training distribution between theoretical and practical, and the types of labs or exercises that you're going to perform?
Oh yeah, that's a lot of fun to talk about because we are known for the labs. So wherever we do training, the labs are the one that is the hero of the story there, because we have a lot of labs. I would say about 70% of the class is labs. So it's going to be a very hands-on experience. And we've generally found that people like that simply because they understand concepts much better when they have a hands-on experience. Otherwise, theoretical is just fine. I mean, it's okay. I'm not saying theoretical is bad, but you have to have a practical exposure to things that are happening. So even in our hands-on, so what we do is that we do something called stories, where we explore a case and we build the hands-on lab to fit that case. So you're doing this. In a company, you have this particular challenge. So how would you build a hands-on? How do you build a lab for that? How do you build a setup for that? How do you implement container security scanning for that? So we actually take that hands-on lab to the next level, and we present it as practical stories. So most of our students, when they're done with the class, they write back and say that, hey, you know what? I was just able to take the scripts you gave me and start using it at my workplace the very next day that I went back to work, because that was how easy it was to apply these concepts from the labs back to their workplace. So yeah, I would say the distribution is about 70-30 and sometimes even more, and in favor of the labs. And when we are walking through the labs, you also get a little bit more theory. So it's not only that we're just going to be doing labs and not understanding anything related to it. It's just that the labs are a flow. The labs have been designed in the format that flows in to create more theoretical concepts as you go through the lab itself. So yeah, that's one of the things.
That's
so
awesome.
We can talk about it. Yeah.
And what would you think will be like the key lessons or takeaways that the students will get after this training?
So yeah, so we're doing 2 trainings with Ekoparty this year. One is the DevSecOps Masterclass. That's our largest and most comprehensive DevSecOps class. And we have the other training, which is the 3-day containers, attacking and defending containers, Kubernetes and serverless. I'm going to address these 2 trainings separately so that you'll understand the big things around both these trainings. So DevSecOps Masterclass was the one that we launched in Black Hat last year in 2019. This is the 4-day class, and this class is probably the most intense and extensive, comprehensive DevSecOps class. So because it covers a wide array of subject matter. So it starts off with, hey, how do you do application security, scaling, automation, and DevOps integration with AppSec, right? So I'm talking about static analysis, dynamic analysis. We introduce new tools all the time. It's probably our fastest moving training because the new tools coming up all the time. The classes also has exposure to a lot of new things that are happening in the industry. So we update this training every 1.5 months to 2 months or so. Every time we're running, in fact, for Ekoparty, we're adding 3 new labs, brand new labs that have not been seen before. So So what we are thinking of doing is having so basically the first 2 days of the class is going to be a lot about AppSec, right? How do you do AppSec automation? How do you scale your static analysis? How do you do source composition analysis? And the most important thing, in fact, that no, I don't think we see out there in the industry at all, is talk about how you can do dynamic scanning in an automated way. Now, this is something that a lot of people struggle with a lot. In fact, like I said, a lot of folks write to me and say, you know what, static analysis is great, I can understand source composition, but how do I do dynamic scanning? How do I essentially address that issue? Well, I need to do that. So this class is probably the only one of its kind that addresses that problem. So how do you do dynamic scanning with automation? How do you do it in an automated pipeline? And then we give you a bunch of different exposure points to frameworks and tools, a lot of which that we've built ourselves because we have done it for our clients. So we have used the same kind of tools and we put it in the class because it gives them the direct access to those capabilities. And all of these are open source tools, so they don't have to pay for it. Once they're done with the class, all these students walk out with these open source tools that they can start using anywhere they want. So that's one of the big things about the first 2 days of DevSecOps. The next 2 days of DevSecOps has a very cloud and container focused coverage. So in the sense that, hey, you know what, you've done DevSecOps for AppSec, you've addressed the applications part of the problem, but how do I do this on the cloud? How do I deploy automation on the cloud in a way that is secure? Or how do I do automation on containers and Kubernetes that makes it secure, that allows me to address it for security issues? And this is the next part, which is also equally interesting, because you're going to be spinning up cloud automation instances. You will be doing a lot of in-depth deep dive into cloud environments, container automation environments, Kubernetes automation environments. So that's one of the things. So this is like a very holistic class, right? It gives you a 360-degree view of the entire DevSecOps landscape, because you're actually getting it. And all of this is solutions that we've implemented for clients of ours, and we've seen this. So these are not just theoretical concepts. These have been applied hardcore at client engagements, and they've worked. So these are things that we've found. So a lot of this comes from experience, things that we've made mistakes with that we are trying to address, in the sense that we've made some mistakes somewhere and we've tried to address it with something else, and that's worked, and that's what we bring. So the students essentially in the DevSecOps Masterclass, the 4-day variant, which you're going to do at Ekoparty, get the distilled knowledge of all of that trial and error and research and development that we've done for our clients when we work with our clients and so on. So that's something that is very interesting about that class. Now, the second class that we are running at Ekoparty, which is attacking and defending containers, Kubernetes, and serverless, is a very probably one of the most popular trainings that we run. So we've run that at OWASP, we've run that at several events, and everybody has loved it, because they are going through within their organizations itself, for the most part, the evolution of these three technologies. So you're seeing some teams work with containers and Kubernetes, and you're seeing some teams that are cloud-centric working with serverless technology. And serverless technology sounds very interesting because you think that, hey, there's no server, so what can go wrong? But you'll realize that there are actually a lot of very interesting attack possibilities with serverless. So this is a very component-focused class, right? So we look at containers, we'll break containers, then we'll fix them, we'll secure them. Then we look at Kubernetes, we'll attack Kubernetes and secure. So each of them has an attack defense flavor, right? So you're not just getting, hey, this is the way to only attack. We're not only focusing on that. The idea here is, even for somebody who is building stuff or making things more secure, the idea here is that that person learns, hey, this is how an attacker would go after my Kubernetes cluster. And this is how I should fix it. These are the controls I need to use to fix it. And we go through hands-on labs in both these cases. And same with serverless as well. So even with serverless, we look at different variants of serverless attacks and how you can actually apply, remediation efforts to that. So it's it's again, very holistic. It's a lot of fun. That class has always been a lot of fun, along with this class as well. But both of them are extremely hands-on. Like I said, there are a lot of, you need to, we've made things a lot easier today. Our labs today are a lot easier in terms of being able to run them. You don't even need to walk in. You don't need to install an EVM. You just run it on the browser. It's very easy to do. But they will give you hardcore expertise in these areas that we're looking to reach. Yeah.
That's very interesting. So in a nutshell, why would you say potential students should take these trainings?
Okay, so again, I'll address two of these trainings separately. In a nutshell, let's talk about DevSecOps first, right? Now, you're entering a world in which application security has to scale, and you need to know how to do that. And this is the way to do that. This training will give you all the necessary tools to help you scale application security wherever you are. And in addition to that, it will also future-proof your career, because remember, anywhere you go, any career listing, any job posting today regarding or related to, or even minor, externally related to application security requires DevSecOps skills. So this will give you that much needed skill, is what I strongly feel. So that's a nutshell about DevSecOps. Let's look at the next one. Now, unless you have lived under a rock for the last 3 years, you would have realized that containers, Kubernetes, and the cloud are here to stay. They're probably going to be there as the most important ways to deploy applications to production environments or otherwise. And you need to understand that these are complex technologies. If you don't understand that as an AppSec or any kind of security professional, you're likely to be left out. Because these are things that are not like the old ways of doing security or old ways of doing deployments. These are extremely new. These have a lot of moving parts. And these are intensive in terms of their own ways of learning them and understanding them. So it's definitely, in a nutshell, I think that this would give you a great set of starting points for you to get expertise in those 3 areas as well. Okay.
Awesome. What do you think are the skills or qualities that a person needs to have to be good at application security?
Right. Yeah, that has changed. That's a very good question. And the answer to that question is that this has changed. So I entered the application security industry in 2010. At the time, I would say that, hey, you know what, you should just have a curious bent of mind, and you should, I mean, of course, that's still valid. I'm not saying not have a curious bent of mind. What I'm trying to say is that at that time, application security was still not very mainstream. People, yeah, they understood it, but they were not taking it that seriously. I still saw that there was not much awareness to a lot of these application security issues. But as we've gone around, especially with some of these massive breaches that have happened, your Capital One, your Equifax, your big breaches, right? So big breaches involving apps alone. Application security, and on the one hand, you had these massive breaches because attackers are going after apps because they realize that, hey, if I go after the apps, I'm able to steal, or I'm able to exfiltrate, or I'm able to do massive, whatever I need to do at massive scale. And at the same time, you have the developers who are going at a breakneck speed, and security is kind of left behind. So AppSec today is all about playing a very important supporting role to engineering teams. So which means that as an application security professional today, it's not only important that you know how to hack things, but it's also important that you know how to figure out how to scale it, how to fix it, and how to understand the changes that are happening in your engineering processes all the time. You have to play a supporting role to your engineering team. For you as an AppSec professional, your engineering team are your customers. So you have to play that role. And if somebody can play that role well, they have a great future as an AppSec professional today. So that's something that I definitely feel with how AppSec is evolving and how I've seen it evolve as well.
Excellent. So now we want to get to know you better. And since we are here in LATAM, we are wondering what's the community and the InfoSec scene over there in India where you are. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, first of all, I would have been very excited to be in Argentina for the conference, but unfortunately, owing to the situation, that this is where we are, and it would have been a lot of fun to be there. But I'm glad to be able to do this either way. Now, India, in some ways, I think while I'm not 100% sure about this because I've never been to Latin America and I would really want to, but I see, especially from the way, especially from media and social media, that there are a lot of commonalities between Latin America in general and India, right? So a lot of people. So India is an up-and-coming region. It's always been a technology-centric area. So we've generally had a lot of technology flowing through our veins ever since the 90s. So you would see that the technology scene in India, especially the south of India where I'm from, is pretty intense. In fact, it's called the Silicon Valley of the East, where I'm from. My hometown is called Bangalore, and it's called the Silicon Valley of the East. And I see that that kind of ambition and drive is there in the LATAM region as well. So I see a lot of new professionals emerging from the LATAM region. I have folks who reach out to me from Mexico, from Argentina, from Chile, and different parts of Latin America, and all of them are really driven to do security and IT security, or generally information technology, really well. We've got some great cloud security professionals coming from that region. Some great tools being written by people from that region. India is very much like that. I would say that I draw a lot of parallels. So India is more on the enterprise IT side of the fence. So a lot of Indian companies build massive enterprise IT systems for the West, especially the US. So most of the banks in the US that you're probably working with and you're e-banking with, it's probably written by a bunch of Indian companies. So, again, some are good, some are bad. I don't want to comment about that. But what I'm trying to say is that there is a massive IT and IT security scene in India. And it's getting bigger and bigger because people realize, in fact, bug bounty, if you look at the bug bounty forums, you'll see that most of the entries are from India. And it also helps that we have a huge population, but you'll see that most of the bug bounty entries and bug bounty hunters today are from India. So I really have a lot of respect for the IT security scene out here. So, yeah.
That's exciting. Yeah, so we see a huge growth and lots of people coming in and eager to learn and get in touch. So we're pretty excited to be able to do this every year, be the place where people gather. Well, of course, as you were saying, this year we have no choice than doing it online. And even though we're gonna miss being there with each other, I think also there's a silver lining in terms of people don't have to travel to take the trainings or be at the conference, which sometimes can be expensive or take too long. So that might be this year the silver lining, to take these trainings that you're going to give online. And also, speaking about your community there, how does it work? Do you guys also have conferences like Ekoparty there? Do you travel to other places, to Asia, Europe, the US? Where do you meet?
Oh, this is the first year that I'm actually not traveling anywhere, but for the most part, I do about anywhere between 100 and 120 days on the road. So I'm traveling all the time. That's something that I'm used to, fortunately or unfortunately, my family is used to as well. India does have a conference scene, but we do have a couple of big conferences. In fact, it's getting bigger now. There are lots more of B-sides events that are happening in India. We see a lot more, there's one big one called NullCon that happens every March in India. So there is definitely a active IT security scene, cybersecurity scene. There are also a lot of chapters, right? So you have a lot of OWASP chapters in different cities. It's a huge country. So in the sense that India is a very large country in terms of both population, in terms of landmass as well. So you will see a lot of cities, and you will have chapters in small cities, large cities. You see this quite a bit. But around the conferences, I tend to spend most of my time in conferences in the US, simply because We45 is dual headquartered in the US. So we have headquarters in the US and then in India, and recently in Canada as well. But I tend to spend a little more time in the US events, and I do travel to Europe for some events as well. Like I said, this year would have been my first ever LATAM travel experience if it were not for COVID-19. But in general, we have a lot of different I would say that the Indian community also centers some conferences around India, but I think some people in the Indian InfoSec community, cybersecurity community, still make their way to the Hacker Summer Camp in the US every August. So that's quite a big thing as well. Yeah.
And you have a lot of experience, well, as a speaker and as a trainer. What do you think is the skill that it's needed to pass on this knowledge? We see sometimes researchers are so technical that sometimes it might be hard to even write it down or even speak about it. What do you think is it's the skill, and in your case, how did you manage to become good at teaching?
That's a very nice question. Nobody's ever asked me that, but I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability. I think the initial aspect of my teaching experience came from my mom, because my mom is a soft skills trainer. So she trains companies on international business etiquette and soft skills and so on. So I grew up from a very early age watching what she did, and even I used to prepare a lot of PowerPoint slide decks for my mom. So kind of had this experience from, I think, about 12, 13 years old. I've been around PowerPoint decks looking at training, and I even used to accompany her on some training programs and so on. So I used to see firsthand kind of what it takes to be a good trainer, because she used to have very good communication. She used to get her ideas over to the participants very clearly. So that was a big influencing factor in my life. Later on in my life, around 2007 or so, I had a mentor who taught me how to code. So he was a engineer in one of the IT companies in India, and I just went to him. He was a relative of mine, and I told him, hey, I want to learn how to code, and he taught me how to code. And he didn't teach me how to code like a regular coding school, or even with a book or anything like that. He just said, hey, what is the problem you want to solve? Tell me the problem you want to solve, and let's write some code to solve that problem. So the first problem I wanted to solve was create an income tax calculator. I mean, I know it's not a very particularly interesting problem to solve, but that was an income tax calculator that I wanted to write, and I did. And he told me how you should write it and all of these things, and he gave me some ideas, and I ended up doing that thing myself. So I realized that one of the key aspects of training for me was, one is to make it interesting for your participants and think of it from their perspective. What are their needs from this? Because it's not about you, right? You have some knowledge, but it's not about your knowledge that it matters. What matters is what matters to that person who is sitting in your class, who's learning or hoping to learn something from you. What matters to that person? And that is something I try and do. Not just me, my entire team, we try and do that every single time we do a training, right? We think of it, we put ourselves in the shoes of our attendees and try to come up with content, come up with labs, come up with our entire frame of thought around that person. Of course, around that group of people. So I think that's the first thing you should do, right? Which is think about it from their perspective and break it down in that sense, because there is a wide skill set, right? So when somebody comes, especially for a public training like Ekoparty, you'll have some people with lots of skills, some people with not too many skills. So you'll have a mix of people, right? There's always a mix of people. So we try and balance out some basic content, some advanced content. We give the advanced folks some content that makes sense for them. We give the basic people some content that makes sense for them. So we try and balance out their goals, and we put them in mind first. That's number one. Number two, I think you have to, one of the things that also helped me a lot as a trainer was my experience in theater. And I'm eternally grateful for my experience in theater. So I used to write plays, and I used to direct plays and theatrical productions in my hometown not too long ago, actually, as early as maybe 7-8 years ago. And I took a lot back from the experience, how you need to emote your voice modulation. If somebody speaks in a droning voice, especially virtual, that's going to be a terrible experience. But if somebody is expressive, their voice is expressive, their eyes are expressive, then it makes for much more interesting teaching and much more interesting listening to. Because remember, this is a class where people come in and they get, today's attention spans are really, really short. So if you have to address that, you need to work on your voice, work on your expressions to a certain extent, and not make it boring and not make it sleepy for people. Yeah, and the last one is really, it's come from experience. Make it easy for people to learn from you, in the sense that one of the things we have done in V45, we started training in about 2012, right? So we've been doing this for a good 8 years now. So one of the things that we have done, and we've always tried to do, is make it easy for people to learn. Because when you're learning, you should not have, I've seen a lot of people who take pride in the fact that when you're learning something, they make it as hard as possible for people to learn, because they feel that, hey, this is what, if you don't learn when the things are hard, then you'll never learn. That's not the point. Remember, people have limited time, they have limited patience, they have limited energy and resources, and they want to get the most distilled amount of knowledge as fast as they can from you, and you need to make it easy to learn. So that's why our entire decision around how we run the labs, how we do the material, how we run anything in the class is based on that major principle. Like, make it easy for people to learn, because when they learn, they can always go and do something with it, right? But if they don't learn, or if they come out of the class being impressed by the teacher but not learning anything, that's really pointless. So you need to make it easy to learn, and that's something that I really find that it's critical to have. Yeah,
that's great advice. And also, I'm very surprised, and now that you mentioned the theater experience, I can see it in the way you talk. It really shows, and yeah, it's great advice. Anything we could have seen in your place or something, or was it all local?
it was in English, but yeah, I don't think there's a video of it anywhere. I think there were a bunch of trailers and stuff on YouTube, but yeah, no, I don't think there's. Yeah, these were all local plays that we did for a small audience, but it was fun. It was just a phase in my life. I wish I could get back to that a little bit more, but it's sometimes just no time.
No time, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so last question for you, because we don't want to take too much of your time. What's the biggest hack or accomplishment that you're most proud of in your career?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think building V45 has been a very satisfying and something that I would consider an accomplishment, because I started this company when I was clueless. I started this in 2010. I was 22 years old, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I still kind of don't know what I'm doing, but I'm a little bit better at knowing what I'm doing. So in the sense that I think, so I've learned to understand, first of all, how it is to run a business. I've always seen my father do it, and some of my relatives do it, but I had to do it firsthand. Of course, with a lot of help. I didn't do it all by myself. I'm not one of those self-made men. It's a lot of help from a lot of people. Great team that we have here. They continue to support quite a bit. We've had people who've been there since the beginning. So that's been, I think, a pretty huge accomplishment as far as I would say that for myself, that would be a huge accomplishment, because we have really done some amazing things, the team and I. So yeah, we have the training system we've built, the products we've built, the customers we've worked with, the satisfaction we've got, and the satisfaction they've got from our work is something I think has been an accomplishment beyond anything else, I would say. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So again, we really want to thank you for this time, for this interview, and for being a trainer this year at Ekoparty with 2 awesome trainings. We hope people on the other side watching this will be encouraged to take these trainings. If you're interested in DevSecOps and or container security, you know where to learn. These trainings will be held online this year. You have all the information in the Ekoparty website. You can reach us if you want to learn more about the prices, the dates, and everything. And we really hope to see you, everyone, at Ekoparty this year in September. So again, thank you, Abhay. We'll talk soon, and we're very happy to have you this year.
I'm extremely excited to be there myself, and thanks so much for doing this. Thanks so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.